Hi, happy Monday. I've had two very important conversations in the last few days that I'd like to share some perspective on, relating to the feminist movement, the Me Too movement, causing harm to the rest of us. So it's a very interesting conversation that I had with two lovely ladies in two different work environments recently, and both of them were saying that there is there's benefit that has come from the Me Too movement in terms of voices being heard and women speaking out about inappropriate situations or perhaps violent or harmful situations that they've had involving men. But at the same time, what has really happened in many cases is that a lot of anger has been propagated by this movement. So from the perspective of these two ladies in professional work environments within Ontario, Canada, this was an interesting interaction with me because both of them said that situations in the workplace involving men that they have known for a very long time and that they've cultivated really good relationships with the men within their immediate environment, there has now been some discomfort and they're not really sure how to relate to one another, and it's almost like a little uncomfortable dance has been created because no one knows if they're being inappropriate or if they're offending the other one, how they should interact, what one another's needs are, and it's become kind of messy and uncomfortable. So I agree with this. I find it very, very interesting, and I do think that it's something that women need to be aware of, both men and women, but particularly women, because the movement is moving ahead in a direction that could be beneficial, but at the same time we have to be very careful that harm is not caused in the interim. So there's a similarity that I'm seeing also, having lived on Borneo for 4 years and being involved with activists for the palm oil and environmentalist movement. I got very active within the palm oil movement, and I started awareness in South Africa regarding the palm oil movement once I had seen what was happening to the rainforest and everything just being decimated. But in all honesty, in a very short space of time, I actually backed off this movement, and while I was initially leading the movement from a place of awareness and educating the public on the situation, because at that stage there simply was no awareness of what was happening within the environment, within the international environment, I very quickly backed off it because it became incredibly aggressive and particularly fundamentalist in its nature. So I think the message that I want to share, also bridging into the world of yoga, is that yes, in the world of yoga, how this relates to me working in a wellness and yoga environment and offering services for trauma-sensitive yoga teacher training and trauma-sensitive retreats and workplace mitigation. The way that this relates to that is that we have to be able to relate to one another in a way that is not harmful, but at the same time we can't go out either A, on one side of the scale and be fundamentalist in our approach and cause harm and propagate anger and fear and aggression, and on the other side of the scale there is very much within the yoga and wellness industry, there's very much like a fluffy hippie, everybody just needs to love one another approach, which really doesn't help anybody move forward in a practical sense either. So for me, we need to find middle ground with this. It is somewhere in between, and in order to find middle ground and have somewhere in between, we need to have the skills to A, relate to people in a practical way, B, you need communication skills in order to relate in a practical and realistic way. You need conflict resolution, dispute resolution skills. And for me, the beauty of having a healthcare background and working very much with people dealing with burnouts and dealing with trauma-sensitive work is that having an understanding of the physiological responses. So by physiological, I mean what's actually happening with your body in a situation where you feel threatened or the individual feels threatened. When people feel threatened, we are pretty much responding from a base animal survival mechanism. So when people feel threatened, when they are fearful, they will fight. The beauty of having a physiological understanding and understanding how the body is responding with stress response and what happens within your physiological changes is that by having this understanding, we're able to mitigate conflict, so prevent it from starting in the first place. So for me, this is the beauty of the bridge, is that I'm seeing this fundamentalist movement very much as a group of women who are, and large scale, particularly North American movement, is that fear and anger is currently used in marketing and media as the driving force of almost everything. So we have the fight against drugs, the fight against cancer, the fight against just about everything. When you pay attention to social media and you pay attention to the media, the word fight is used consistently. This in itself triggers survival mechanism and triggers a stress response within people without them even realizing it. Together with people having uncomfortable situations or perhaps past situations that they haven't resolved within themselves, people are bonding from a place of fear, and people are bonding from a place of anger. People are bonding from a place of resentment. And this simply propagates fundamentalist behavior. So fundamentalists are very much recognized and identified as terrorists, and we're seeing a lot of aggression and violence within the world, and this is recognized as fundamentalist behavior. But as far as I'm concerned, this very aggressive, anger-driven movement when it comes to environmentalists or whether it comes to the feminist movement is in itself fundamentalists. The same can be said, I saw the same behavior on a very small island in Thailand that concerned the vegan movement. A very angry group of people essentially targeted a small business owner on this small island. The man was working very hard to be a good business owner and to contribute financially to a very small community through using tourism and by offering meat and barbecues as his business offering. And a group of spiritual people who considered themselves to be part of the yoga movement and who identified as being vegans actively made efforts to try and close this man down, or actively made efforts to try and destroy his reputation. Really bad reviews, really bad fake reviews all over his Facebook page, really bad fake reviews all over Google from people that had never actually used his business as an attempt to sabotage what this man was doing, primarily because his business offering went against their beliefs. So for me, the common behavior here, whether it's from a food situation or from an environmental situation or from a gender-related situation, is that if you're causing harm and you're being aggressive and you're instigating violence, the message is lost. So these people may have important points to relay, but it's not so much what you're saying, it's the way that you're saying it. And it's if it's causing harm, it harms the rest of the movement. So looping back to the two ladies within the work environment that are now have now been dealing with situations where there's discomfort in their workplace because nobody really knows how to relate to one another now, and everyone is kind of walking on eggshells because there's discomfort within the environment. This doesn't help anyone at this point. When you cause when interactions is causing a sense of insecurity, emotional insecurity, and they're kind of insecure and afraid of how to deal with one another, it directly propagates anger. It directly propagates frustration. And if we are to believe that, from a yoga perspective, if non-violence is part of the umbrella of everything that we're doing, then this within itself is in direct conflict with what we're supposed to be trying to do. So I'm going to leave you with that and just say that a large part of my work is exactly this. Is, like I said before, understanding the physiological responses of what is happening with the body, understanding how your body is working. Different body types and different constitutions function in different ways. We metabolize food in different ways. We function in different ways. We process stress in different ways. Our nervous system responds to stimuli in different ways. And all of these, the greater understanding of this is what then helps me mitigate conflict. reduce stress with people and just help them get through life in a much easier and more balanced way, to help you find your balance, so to speak, the personal middle ground. Once personal middle ground has been accomplished, that then spills over into the greater community, within families and within within your neighbors, within your greater community, and then ideally within an entire cultural setting. What we're seeing now, I feel, in terms of North America, comparing a lot of the countries that I've lived in previously, is that we're currently seeing a culture of fear. We're currently seeing a culture of protectionist measures. We're currently seeing governments cutting budgets, and this in itself, when we see governments cut budgets for fundamental aspects of society, this very much gives an indication of fear. So it's important to recognize this, such that your own physiological responses you can become more aware of, as opposed to unleashing your own anger and unleashing your own frustration all over your family and all over your neighbors or greater community, and causing situations of conflict. The diminishing conflict and the mitigation of conflict essentially begins with the individual. So if you need some help with this, if you would need personal perspective, I do work online. You're free to reach out to me on info@cellularlife.com. I do private retreats, I do teacher training, and I also do workplace wellness and workplace conflict mitigation. So you can find me on cellularlife.com, on social media, YouTube channels, WhatsApp, or via email at info@cellularlife.com. I hope this is useful. Have a lovely day. Bye.